Okay, this is the infamous wa particle lesson. And by that, I mean, this is a grammar point of Japanese that a lot of people are not very fond of. So let's just go straight into it. The wa particle marks the topic of a sentence. It uses the ha hiragana. So this hiragana is ha. If you ever see it in a word, it is ha. However, when we use it as a particle, it is wa. It's pronounced wa. This is why you might occasionally see the romaji as wa, and you might occasionally see it as ha. It just depends who is writing the romaji. Some people choose to put it as ha. Some people choose to put it as wa. When this character here is in a normal word, it is ha. It is always going to be ha. When it is used as a particle marking the topic, it will be wa. I've got a few exceptions below. I think they are the only ones that I can personally think of. There might be more later on or something like that, but I have studied for years and these are the only ones that pop up on the top of my head. Okay, exceptions. Good day. So you might recognize this as hello or good day or just a general greeting. Konnichiwa. This has the ha, hiragana at the end, but it is pronounced wa. Good evening. Konbanwa. This again, it has the ha hiragana at the end. So earlier in lesson 1, we learned some basic math phrases. One of them was equals, which is wa. This one is also pronounced wa, even though it uses the ha hiragana, technically, if you were going to write it. It uses the equals symbol, but if you really wanted to write the pronunciation, as if you were writing this word here, equals, in Japanese, it would be wa. With the ha hiragana. All other times I can think of, the ha hiragana is going to be pronounced ha in a word. So try not to overthink that as well. It looks kind of confusing. Oh my gosh, there's these little rules to it. It's really not that bad. It's just whenever it's a particle, it is wa. Whenever it's in a word, like any other time, it is ha, apart from the few little exceptions that I have listed. So, but first, what is a particle? Particles are small words that indicate relations of words within a sentence. Most Japanese learners are not fond of the Japanese particles. We have them in English too. So we have particles in English, such as I go to the shop or I go in the shop. It basically just tells you how you are interacting with the shop. Go to versus go in. However, Japanese has a few extra particles that we don't have, which is why you might find them difficult. Okay, before we go on, we're just going to go over what a sentence topic is. As the particle we're about to learn is the topic marker, we need to know what a topic is. And it is the main idea of the sentence. It's the main point of the sentence. So for example, in the sentence, my cat eats a lot of fish. The topic is my cat. We're talking about my cat in this sentence. I might say something after that. It doesn't really eat cow, I don't know, beef. But he eats a lot of fish. The topic can then change on to something else. So this is something that I didn't really get my head around, but you can use the wa quite a lot. In my head, there's another particle that's very, very similar to the wa particle, which we're not going to do in this lesson. But I was like, oh, once we've introduced the topic, then we probably won't use the topic marker again. No, you can change the topic. Have a conversation with a friend or a family, or even just in your head. You can change topic a lot. You might be like, my cat eats a lot of fish. And then you might be like, oh yeah, speaking of fish, I had fish curry last night. And then I don't know. Oh yeah, my friend Ben likes fish curry. There's loads of different topics you can have. You can change topic so often. But this just marks the main point. It marks the topic of your sentence. It is very, very hard for someone who has never had to think about a topic in a sentence before to pick out a topic. That is true. That is really, really true. Don't overcomplicate it. Look at example sentences, start simple, and you will make your life so much easier. I am someone who loves to overthink this kind of stuff. Just don't do that. Keep it simple, follow the examples, stick to your level, and work your way up. Okay, so what is the wa particle? I'm going to start with an example and then I'm going to explain it a tiny bit more. So Our example is going to be watashi wa, the particle is wa, gakusei desu. Watashi wa gakusei desu. I am a student. The wa particle is placed directly after the topic, marking what came before as the topic. This particle basically just says, hey, this part of the sentence is the topic. This does not have an English translation. We're going to get onto this in a moment, but there is no English for this. There's a few ways of learning this that people have come up with that could translate to English, but even then, it doesn't translate perfectly. Context and translation. So few languages use this particle. Japanese and Korean are most known for it, and some languages such as Mongolian have similar grammatical features. In short, this is a new concept to many Japanese learners. One of the difficulties of the topic particle is that it doesn't have an English translation. This leaves you with two options, detailed below. Note, do not get in the habit of translating wa as is. It will not work. Des is. So let's just go back. This is a particle that is basically used to say, hey, I'm going to highlight the topic of a sentence. This is really, really difficult for a lot of learners because I don't think there's many languages that make you think about what the topic of your sentence is. So now we have Japanese, where it's quite a difficult language. I think a lot of people would agree it's quite a difficult language if you're maybe a native English speaker. It's very different to English. We then have not only like a sentence structuring that's quite different to English, we have to think about what the topic is in a sentence. And that's not something you have to do with a lot of languages. You don't have to sit there and mark, hey, what I've just said is the topic. This thing here is a topic marker. It is used to mark a topic of a sentence. So you put it straight after the topic, and it's almost like getting a highlighter and saying, that thing I just said is the topic. It's kind of like just announcing it. Yes, that is the topic. It is hard. It's not easy. Let's carry on and look for some little tips on this one. Okay, I'm actually going to go into this a bit more because it's really, really tempting to try and think of wa as is. Wa is not is. It just kind of a lot of the time on very basic sentences works in the exact same place as is would in English. It is not is. You are really, really going to make life harder if you try and think of it as is. This is coming from someone who did that for a very long time. I was just like, oh yeah, it basically can just act as is. It can't. Des is. That is that's what it does. You might have some situations where it works for now. It's not working because it works. It's working out of coincidence. Do not do it. Do not get into that habit. You will make life really, really hard later. Okay, so your first option is to practice and get really good at identifying the topic of a sentence. This is also probably the best way. It means you have a really good understanding of Japanese sentence structures. However, this does not work for everyone. Some people just find this hard. I think I was one of those people that just found it really, really difficult to find the topic of a sentence because I would overthink it. I would be like, the cat eats milk. Maybe the cat is the topic. Maybe milk is the topic. The answer to that is it depends. Are you talking about milk? Or are you specifically talking about the cat? Or are you talking about like... It really depends on the situation. Many people struggle with this particle. Many people struggle with the wa particle, and therefore lots of methods to make it easier have been thought up. The one I personally recommend is thinking of wa as for, or even speaking of. I hear that quite a lot. So with this method, anything before the wa particle is translated as for. So for example, 彼女は学生です. As for her is a student. Remember, one of the tips that I actually recommend is get used to, you don't have to be thinking of sentences in Japanese in your head right now. I think it actually comes a bit later for a lot of people to be thinking of the Japanese sentence first before the English sentence. But what I really recommend is trying to think of the English sentence in the order the Japanese sentence would be. So instead of thinking of it as she is a student, try and think of it as she student is. That might make your life a bit easier. And I actually realized in a very recent class where I was a student that I was finding some of the grammar points easier than one of my friends in the class. And she told me that she translates it from English in the English word order. And she just sometimes gets the like words muddled up, like which order they should be. And we were like in quite an advanced class. And I realized that actually my method of translating it from a Japanese word order with the English words, like just kind of word for word, worked really, really well for me. Again, like the ideal is you're thinking of it in Japanese, but that might take time. Don't beat yourself up over not being able to do that in a few weeks, a few months, even like a few years. Okay, no, Japanese doesn't use a or the. I mentioned this in a previous lesson with the des. So you're welcome to go and look back on that and see any tips and tricks I have for that one. Identifying the topic of the follow. Oh, okay, cool. So this is just a little game you can play on my website. I'm not going to go through it, but it's just kind of look at these and identify the topic of the sentence. Okay, now I'm going to show you some sentences and I want you to decide where to put the wa particle and translate the sentence. You will have 3 seconds. If you need longer, please pause the video. Let's go. Kare sensei desu. 彼は先生です。He is a teacher. 彼女学生です。彼女は学生です。For those of you watching, I like to put the kanji that we've already studied in, so you'll be seeing kanji in this lesson. Let's go. 私、日本語学生です。私は日本語学生です。As a little note, some of you might recognize that you can put a no particle in between 日本語 and 学生. 日本語の学生. This is grammatically correct, but we've not studied the no particle yet in my lessons, so it's not in there. あなた、英語学生です。あなたは英語学生です。Okay, so I'm not going to go into this any further. If you still find this difficult, if you're like, I really don't get this, you will just have to learn it through doing. And actually, this isn't a bad method, just kind of from exposure, seeing it used, you will eventually learn how to use it yourself. This might be a bit harder when we get into more complicated sentences that involve multiple things, multiple people, etc. But at the end of the day, if you do a lot of listening, if you do a lot of reading, if you just use it how you see other people use it, you will eventually get the hang of it. If you're one of those people who just can't get it, I think I was one of those people who really struggled with this particle. Just learn it through doing. Don't worry if you make mistakes. If you have self-studied and you have come across the ga particle, we will do a lesson on that soon. I just don't want to introduce them both at the same time because they can be quite confusing. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I really, really appreciate it, especially as a small channel. I will try and release these videos every few days. So thank you very much for watching and I will see you next time, hopefully.